Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's quick conversation where we are focusing on net zero and environmental stewardship efforts on dairy farms. I'm excited to be joined today by a familiar face, Nicole Ayache, who leads the sustainability initiatives for the farm programs, including environmental stewardship and workforce development, and has been featured on our quick conversation series a few times. And then additionally, I'm excited that we have Jim Biddle joining us as well. Jim and his son Josh own Mill Hill Farms in Williamsburg, Pennsylvania. They have a Holstein herd of about 500 cows and 370 replacement heifers. And whereas Josh and his wife manage the herd and the employees, and Jim oversees the cropping and the field work of about 650 acres. Jim and his wife Carol have been married have four married adult children, four grandsons, and four granddaughters. And Jim has been the director of the Blair County Conservation District since 1992 and is a certified crop advisor. Jim is a director with Maryland and Virginia milk producers and serves on the American Dairy Association Northeast Board and the Dairy Sustainability Alliance, and one that we're personally proud of is a member of our Farmer Advisory Council. His farm, Mill Hill Farms, received the 2008 Blair County Agricultural Community Excellence Award, and in 2010, the Pennsylvania Chesapeake Bay Clean Water Farm Award. In 2017, Jim was named a Master Farmer for the Mid-Atlantic region and received recognition as the Blair County Outstanding Conservation Farmer. So before we kick it off with some questions that I have for those folks, just as a reminder about our quick conversation series, these are really just a series of streamed Zooms and streamed Facebook Lives with an opportunity for dairy farmers to ask questions of our farm team staff and other subject matter experts that we bring on that are experts in areas that relate to the farm program and participation. These are recorded and posted on our website, so you can go back and watch them afterwards or share the link out with others. Along with the recordings, we'll post additional resources relevant to the topic at hand. And while at the beginning, I have a few questions that I'll ask our guest, we would encourage you at the end, if you have questions of them, please submit those as well. We'll try to get to them get to the many as possible when we get to the end. If you're watching over on the Zoom side, you can ask questions from that Q&A or that chat feature. And then if you're listening in on Facebook, you can just type your question in the comment section and we'll get to those when we're at the end. So we'll go ahead and get started with Nicole. Nicole, we have a few questions, just focused around net zero and really just the basic levels of what it is. So if you could start there and just give us an overview of what the net zero initiative is.
Yeah, thanks, Beverly, and thanks everyone for joining. I think the key to understanding the net zero initiative is first taking a step back and talking about our industry-wide 2050 environmental goals. So if you are not yet familiar, they are here on the slide, but U.S. Dairy has set goals to collectively by 2050 become carbon neutral or better, optimize water use while maximizing recycling, and improve water quality by optimizing utilization of manure and nutrients. And so I think the first question I would have when someone says, here's a goal for 2050 is how do we get there? And I think that's where the net zero initiative comes in, and that's what it answers. It's our industry-wide strategy focused on the field to farm gate level of how can we get improvements that will get us to these 2050 goals. And net zero initiative is focused into three primary work streams. So the first one is groundwork, and that's the research pillar of NZI. I think that's self-explanatory when I say it's the research pillar, but there is probably more information on this slide. The second pillar is dairy scale for good. And that is a pillar of the net zero initiative that's looking at a small set, a handful of pilot farms to really demonstrate what's feasible at the farm level to get you to carbon neutral and get you to these goals. And through that process of establishing these pilot farms, really feed into our knowledge set in this area. And then there's the collective impact pillar. And this is a part of NZI that really looks to establish a set of partnership projects across the country that really look at getting a few collaborators working together with dairy farms to encourage adoption of a suite of practices on the farm and better understand, what are some of the technical barriers to getting there, financial barriers, what can we learn from actually engaging in these projects that then we could take as lessons learned for that wider net zero initiative. And I should mention, NZI is the work of across the dairy industry and dairy organizations. So led out of DMI and the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy, but with strong collaboration from NMPF, from Nutrien, from the U.S. Dairy Export Council, and from IDFA, and certainly other collaborators and partners as well. Some may be aware that, for example, Nestle and Starbucks were two of the earliest corporate partners in this initiative, and certainly there I hope will be more as we go.
Thanks, Nicole. And can you speak a little bit to how the FARM program, Farmers Assured Response Management, that type of farm fits into the net zero initiative and the work that farmers are doing through their environmental stewardship evaluations?
Yeah. So I mentioned NMPF has a role within the net zero initiative. And part of that NMPF role is on the legislative and regulatory side. But we also manage the FARM program. And as you mentioned, Farm Environmental Stewardship. So FARM ES is the way that our cooperatives and processors and farmers can measure their carbon footprint today, better understand it for those co-ops and processors, report out on progress, and then set a chart for continuous improvement. So in many ways, FARM ES is a key tool in how we'll understand at the farm level how we stand in relation to the goals and how we might plan for opportunities to get closer to the goals. I will say, FARM ES today, the model behind it isn't set up to do everything that we know we need for the net zero initiative. This is a new initiative. It's a new kind of overarching strategy that we're undertaking. And I think there's a lot to be learned through that groundwork pillar, through the demonstration projects, through the collective impact pillars. All of those lessons learned will feed into FARM ES and grow it over time so that we can better measure where we stand in terms of the goals and also better support producers as they're looking at opportunities for improvements.
So in terms of a individual farm, a participating dairy operation participating in net zero, what does it look like implementing at the individual farm level?
Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities for what one can do at the farm level that can get closer to those 2050 goals. Many farms might already be doing several practices, using different technologies, have already engaged in efforts that, whether or not they call it under the net zero umbrella, in many ways we already think of it that way, because again, it's anything that really contributes to that carbon neutrality, to optimizing water use and optimizing nutrient use. And so this slide captures some of the ideas that are available to producers. It's by no means comprehensive, but it's just trying to bucket the different concepts that can get us to net zero into 4 key focus areas. So anything to do with feed production and practice changes, manure handling, cow care and efficiency, and then energy efficiency. And I will say, as we present kind of these ideas for where farms can start thinking about opportunities, not every practice or technology is going to work for every farm. We know that every farm is different because of geography, management style, priorities. We're talking about how do we highlight what the possible opportunities are and what might work for that individual operation. I think as time goes on, I think I would encourage everyone to keep looking out for additional communications and information that will help share more of those opportunities that are available to farms. But this is also why I'm so excited that Jim is on with us today and will be able to share a little bit about his farm, because I think you'll see that there are just a lot of opportunities out there. And again, some farms have already been on this journey for a while, and there's a lot that we can learn from them, especially.
Yeah, I think that's a great point and a great pivot to talk to Jim for a little bit, really learning where the rubber meets the road, how we're implementing this on farm, taking it from big picture and really implement it. So Jim, turn it over to you. If you wanted to start off and just maybe tell us a little bit more about your operation, what life is like on the farm back home in Pennsylvania.
Okay, thanks, Beverly, and thanks for the deep dive, Nicole. And happy Earth Day from Central Pennsylvania. My son Josh and his wife Amanda are really the heartbeats of our dairy operation, and they manage it with 4 full-time and 2 part-time employees. Josh has given me the opportunity and responsibility of growing the forage for our dairy herd and replacements on 650 acres of fertile soil, and we usually experience midsummer droughts. Josh has been incredibly supportive of my efforts. So our farm is located in the northern end of Morson's Cove, which is situated between 2 mountain ranges. Besides mountains, we have ridges and valleys and a high-quality cold water fishery stream running through our property and ultimately to the Chesapeake Bay. As a kid, my experiences of eating dust with every tillage pass, seeing gullies wash our soil away during storms, not finding worms for fishing, and watching our stream banks erode encouraged me as an adult to implement conservation measures to address these and many other sustainability and regenerative concerns. I would like to know that this has been a 51-year journey for me that began soon after the first Earth Day, when this 13-year-old told his dad that we should fence the cows out of the creek. Not a good start for a teenager. Anyhow, not all farms can implement all practices, as Nicole had mentioned. In this picture taken on November 9th, the field in the foreground is ours. As you look towards the mountain, the green fields in the right half are ours, and the brown fields on the left belong to a neighbor who's a grain farmer. I'm certainly not condemning his farming practices, but I am suggesting that our dairy cropping practices more closely mimic nature. So next slide, please. Okay, so I have developed an environmental benefit key to help capture some of the positive impacts that each of our practices provide to our environment. And you'll see these highlighted on each of the following slides.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, if you could just share a few of those practices that you guys implement, that would be great.
Okay, so cover cropping actually is front and center for our operation. The soils have growing crops year-round. We have significantly reduced soil and wind erosion, and we have greatly enhanced our soil health. All annual crops are double cropped, and by harvesting our covers, we are supplying additional feed for our cattle while allowing the roots to grow to their full potential. The roots feed our hungry microbes, which support this entire soil ecosystem. The ultimate visual result is 30 to 40 earthworm burrows per square yard. And yes, there are over a ton of living organisms per acre of healthy soil. And okay, with our strip cropping, we rotate annual and perennial crops in a 3-year cycle. Alfalfa grass is a perennial, which after 3 years, winters over, and then is harvested the following spring before transitioning to corn silage. And that helps to maintain that green cover year round. This rotation supports the continual production of multi-species microbes. Next slide, please. Never till is my terminology for and the ultimate goal for no-tillers. The only time we disturb the soil is to open a slit, drop the seed, and close the slit. Our soil continually builds structure and becomes porous and flexible. This allows for more robust roots and enhances water infiltration, which reduces soil runoff. Of all the practices that we implement, timing of manure application may have the most positive environmental impact. We apply when certain crops are growing or just after planting of other crops. Timely applications limit our nutrient losses, and manure becomes fertilizer to feed our crops. We we've installed 2 engineered storage shanks in the past 10 years in order to accomplish this goal. And riparian buffers are forested buffers established with native trees and shrubs between the stream and stream bank fencing. This keeps cattle out of the creek and utilizes nutrients that would be moving towards the stream. When the trees are mature, they shade the water and have a cooling effect. In this picture, the buffer shown in white ranges from 50 to 100 foot wide and consists of almost 2 acres. So that's just a quick synopsis. And on this slide, we've listed other practices, and just to point out that when the leaves are changing color, we still have green fields.
Yeah, and I think that obviously Jim has a lot more to add, and we're just a little constrained by time. So if there are any of these on this slide that you have questions about, please feel free to add these in into the question or comment box, and we'll try to grab a few at the end about specifics on these types of practices. So Jim, you shared a lot just in those 6 slides, but you know, a big question comes up as we continue to develop technology, what's really needed to implement these types of practices. So is it required to have things like a digester to make and implement the net zero initiative and environmental stewardship practices?
So if you can make a digester work on your farm, that's a great help. At this point in time, it's not practical for us, but as you've seen, there are many ways to make a difference with net zero.
Yeah, and you know, I think the other thing, if you would be willing to share that to take away for folks that are listening in, is really if you could share something that maybe you thought was going to work on your operation and work on your farm, and then if ended up not having the outcome that you expected to in the environmental space?
Probably the best example for that. By the way, this is my moldboard plow that's been sitting for about 30 years. Just thought it'd be a great picture to add. But I can remember back in late 2012, Greg Roth, who at the time was an agronomist with Penn State University, suggested that we create a 3-year study on how to make quality treated cow silage for lactating dairy cows while also improving soil health. So in the spring of 2013, before the study began, we harvested some spring forage just to get a feel for the process. And the outcome was pretty poor because we hadn't managed our cover crop for harvest. Looking back, our failure resulted from a low density stand, along with poor timing and not enough fertility. And Beverly, as you asked that question, I was thinking a little beyond that, because actually, since failure usually presents an opportunity, we went on to implement a successful study. We added forage to our bunkers and enhanced our soil biological processes. So my advice with any new practice is start small, continue to build on your experiences for success. And always remember that success is not final, failure is not fatal, and it is the courage to continue that counts.
Thanks for that, Jim. And you know, there may be some listeners in who have questions and kind of are curious about where to start. This isn't something they've put a lot of thought in, or just haven't had the time, or looking for some direction. So could you maybe share just a few of those folks and organizations that you've relied on and reference and look to for some direction in this space?
So resources that we utilized, and I'm talking about a utilization for guidance, for implementation, and also funding. I had referenced Penn State University, Greg Roth, and then as well as our county extension service. Blair County Conservation District has been very helpful and supportive. Blair County NRCS office. And in our area, we have a Western PA Conservancy, but any of these resources should be pretty readily available for anybody, no matter where you're located. I just wanted to mention in our area also, we have and I haven't not used these sources, but the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. And then we're also seeing currently co-ops, dairy co-ops forming partnerships with customers. For example, the Turkey Hill Clean Water Partnership with Maryland, Virginia milk producers, which gained national attention for Dairy Sustainability Award in 2020. And also recently, Giant formed a partnership with Maryland, Virginia also. Just to note though, if you're looking for funding, most funding sources require planning well in advance so that funding is secured prior to the start of the project.
Thanks for those comments, Jim. I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience. So as a reminder, to submit your questions, you can either tap that Q&A box or the chat feature and type them in, or you can type them in the comment section on Facebook. We don't have the option for attendees to take themselves off mute. Nicole, if you wanted to come back on camera, we have a few questions to go ahead and get us started. First one for you, Nicole. Within the net zero initiative, does this mean that every farm is expected to get to net zero?
A good question. So the short answer is no. I don't, certainly that would be great, but more realistically, the target for getting to carbon neutral, firstly, is really that collective industry. So it's from field to processing to to the processing and manufacturing. We're talking the entire dairy industry for getting to net zero. In terms of at the farm level, our expectation is some farms will be net zero. Some farms will actually be sequestering even more carbon or capturing more carbon than they put out. So they'll be net negative. And then some farms are still going to be net positive. The goal is that when you add that all together collectively, we'll get to net zero or better. But it's not going to be feasible for every single farm depending on their unique constraints, whether that be geography, whether that be the amount of land they manage versus not. It's not going to be possible for every single farm. Although I would love to be proven wrong. Maybe we'll get to 2050 and we'll see that I was totally wrong and everyone got to net negative. But I think more likely it's going to be a variation across our industry.
Thanks, Nicole. Jim, a question for you. Do you think from your experience that this is really just something that's targeted and capable and a goal for larger farms, smaller farms? Who is this really? Is this something that everyone can achieve and work towards? What are your thoughts on that?
I think all of us have an opportunity to participate. And, we've received funding over the years, to help with some of these projects, but our net gain probably much more outweighed that was a much more greater impact than the funding that we received. So yeah, small projects, anything helps.
Thanks. And we've been hearing a lot about biodiversity these days. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about the pollinator habitat that you have on your farm?
Yeah, so we have actually several pollinators, and there's like 18 to 20 species or native species. We have them strategically located on the farm, and there's like early, mid, and late maturing varieties, so that we're we're offering a habitat year round, basically. Just a note of management, we tend to like mow it maybe every couple of years just to keep volunteer trees from growing in it.
Thanks. And the last question I have sent in, just kidding. I have two more. One just popped in. I want to make sure that we get that. Have a question that asks, is this a new program, Net Zero? Is it a new program? I'm actually not sure if they're talking about the farm program or about a net zero, but Nicole, if you want to take both of those, net zero. So is the net zero a new program, or has it been active for a while? And do we know what percentage of dairy farms follow the program?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the net zero initiative, and I hate that this is recorded, someone's going to quote me, officially launched last year. And if anyone knows, please, if I'm incorrect, put it in the chat box. But the net zero initiative followed closely from when we set the 2050 goals. So it's new as a program. You know, organizing our thoughts into those pillars of groundwork in terms of collective impact, in terms of demonstration projects, that's new. And that's where I think there'll be more communications as we go. But that said, even though the net zero initiative is new, we know that dairy farmers implementing these practices, working on these technologies and improvements, that's not new. We have a lot of evidence for the carbon footprint decreases over the years, water footprint decreases over the years. The most recent one looked at the 2007 to 2017 time period and showed that dairy farms had decreased their carbon footprint by 19% over that time period. So we already know there's a lot of really good work. The net zero initiative is really, how do we take that momentum that dairy already has and get us even further? How do we get to that really ambitious goal of being carbon neutral or better? And in terms of percentage of farms in the program, there's no strict, you're in the program or you're not. At least today, there's no criteria of a farm. How do you determine if you're in it or not? Being a part of net zero is just being committed to exploring those opportunities that can support our industry-wide efforts. So whether that's working with partners, working with extension, working with your engineer, your trusted advisors to try to think through what might work for your operation, that would be a farm contributing to net zero. So I hope that answers that question a little bit, but feel free to ask follow-ups if you have any.
Yeah, and so what happens, Nicole, if the dairy industry doesn't meet net zero? If the 2050 goals and things like that we talk about, what if we don't get there? What does that mean for the dairy industry?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a really valid question. You set a goal, if for those that have heard the term, a SMART goal, right? You want it to be measurable, you want it to be achievable is one of the criteria. So we've set the goal with the belief that we can get there. I think if we don't get to net zero, we'll still have put in all of this work and effort, and I think we'll get very far and pretty close. So the worst case scenario in my mind is we still do really good work, even if we don't get quite to net zero. So there's no real ramifications, I think, as long as we demonstrate that we've done our due diligence as an industry and put in the effort and time to try to get there and do our best. I think in the public eye that'll really resonate. I don't think anyone will say in 2050 that if we got to 99% towards our goal but didn't get that last 1%, I think we would focus on the great 99% success, not that 1% that we didn't quite get to.
And I think that's all of the questions that we have with us or that have been submitted so far, and we're coming up on the end of our time anyway. So again, want to thank you both for joining us. And especially want to thank Jim for his participation on our Farmer Advisory Council. That is a group of dairy farmers across the country that provide insights to us as farm staff, provide recommendations and review materials that we put out. And so we meet with that group on a monthly basis and then bring them in as needed for their expertise. So definitely want to tell him thank you for his participation and willingness to answer our bugging questions on a regular basis. For those folks that are listening in, just want to give you a reminder that our next quick conversation is on May 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern. We will be talking about the Calf Care and Quality Assurance Program, which is a joint initiative from the FARM program, Beef Quality Assurance, and with support from VQA, Veal Quality Assurance, and the Dairy Calf and Heifer Association that has been developing over the past year. So again, that's on May 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern. If you have additional questions that come up, I think a few popped in as I was signing off of the question section. So feel free to send us an email at dairyfarm@nmpf.org or check out our website for today's recording or other quick conversation recordings. And of course, our social media pages are there at our handle Farm Program. Thanks everyone for joining us, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.